The Vaden banking clans. If you love using these control tokens as IOU tokens, then this faction is probably for you, because a lot of the faction abilities are circling around using these control tokens as IOU tokens. But let's start with their home system and their starting units. So they start with a dreadnought, a carrier, 3 infantry, a cruiser, 2 fighters and a space dock. And in this case here, this is sufficient to get a good start, because you can easily fly out and gain control of one planet with the dreadnought and the other 2 planets with your carrier and the remaining infantry. You also have 2 planets. You start with Vaden, that is a 3 resource and 0 influence planet, and Norvus, which is just a single resource and 2 influence planet. Vaden is really good for your economy, but Norvus is a little annoying because you only get 2 influence, which is not enough to buy another command token on leadership. But it's not all that bad. I will show you a little later. Then you get to choose 2 out of 3 technologies as your starting techs. So you get to choose Zarween tools, Neural Motivator or Anti-Mass Deflectors. And when you're making this choice, then of course you need to know what your faction specific technologies require. So we have the Crover's strike teams that require 2 yellow technologies. So of course that speaks for starting with Zarween tools. And we also have the Midas turbine, which requires 1 blue technology. And that of course speaks for starting with Anti-Mass Deflectors. But if we ignore these 2, then I think Zarween tools and Neural Motivator are the best starting techs out of the 3 here. But maybe Anti-Mass Deflectors could be relevant to get this technology. But I'll get back to these a little later. Now let's get back to Norvus, because if we look at the agent here, the Yudri Zukov, at the start of a player's turn, you may exhaust this card to allow that player to choose 1 planet they control. That player gains a number of commodities equal to that planet's influence value. So even before taking your very first turn in round 1, you can of course use the agent in every round, but then make sure to flip it and gain these 2 commodities, because we have Norvus here with 2 influence on it. And in this example, very conveniently, we have a lot of industrial planets. So whenever we go out here and explore those, then we can easily find, there you go, and abandoned warehouses. You may gain 2 commodities, we already have that, or you may convert up to 2 of your commodities to trade goods. So with the agent, you can very easy get your economy going, and you haven't even exhausted the planet here. And this brings us to the commander, the Comdar Borodin. And to unlock him, have 1 or more different players' control tokens on your faction sheet for every 2 players in the game. So for a regular 6-player game, you will need to have control tokens from 3 other players. So how do you get these? Well, of course you can do it with the trade strategy card and replenish all in exchange for their control tokens here. But we can also have a look at their faction abilities. The first one is Fine Print. After a player resolves the secondary ability of one of your strategy cards, place up to 1 of their control tokens on your faction sheet. So basically, let's say you play construction here and some other players follow the secondary, then they will have to pay you 1 of their control tokens that you can place on your faction sheet here. But we have more. We will skip the collateralized loans for now and jump directly to binding debts. Other players may place their control tokens on your faction sheet at any time. At the start of the status phase, each of your neighbors may give you 1 trade good to remove up to 2 of their control tokens from your faction sheet. So of course, for other players to place their control tokens on your faction sheet, you need to give them an incentive, and that could of course be by playing the trade strategy card, where you often replenish other players in exchange for a debt token. But of course you could also offer them something else that they want, and then you can also get their control tokens in that way. And lastly, they can also pay you to get their control tokens or debt tokens back. And if you go back to the commander, at the start of the status phase, gain 1 trade good for each secret objective you have scored, and 1 commodity for each public objective you have scored. But you are a loan shark, so if we look at the hero here, and to unlock Putriv Siervansk, you need to have scored 3 objectives, as always. For that you get an action. Each control token that belongs to another player on your faction sheet, you may return that token. If you do, that player must give you one of their trade goods, 2 of their commodities, or 1 promissory note from their hand, if able. Then purge this card. So the hero is not exactly a game-winning one, but of course it can help you boost your economy by collecting debt from the other players or a promissory note, and I think that fits very well with the overall theme here. Before going into the mech, let's have a look at the collateralized loans. After one of your opponent's ships is destroyed during a round of space combat, you may remove one of that player's control tokens from your faction sheet to place 1 ship of that type from your reinforcements in the active system. So in a way, you're not really destroying their ships, you're simply taking over their ships by returning their control tokens, making them weaker and you even stronger. So definitely a loan shark you don't want to mess with. And the mech is related to this. At the end of a round of ground combat, you may remove one of your opponent's control tokens from your faction sheet to place 1 infantry from your reinforcements on this planet. So where this one goes into the space combat and the ships, then you can get more infantry out with your mechs and by returning control tokens. Again, making it really hard to win over you in combat. And now let's move on to the flagship, the Aurum Vedra. After this unit produces 1 or more hits during a bombardment roll, gain 1 trade good. So note here that the ship actually got bombardment. It gets to roll 2 dice that hits on a 5, but besides that, the stats are very normal. So yes, in theory, you could earn back the cost for producing this flagship by bombarding other players' planets, but again, really how often do you use bombardment? And that actually brings us to the first faction technology, the Krovos strike teams. After another player's unit uses sustained damage to cancel a hit produced by your units or abilities, you may exhaust this card to destroy that unit. So this is basically an exhaustible direct hit here. After another player's ship uses sustained damage to cancel a hit produced by your units or abilities, destroy that ship. But just like with bombardment, but really how often do you see other players use sustained damage on, well, most often their dreadnoughts? In my experience, it's not that often, so I definitely don't think this yellow tech is worth going for. And even if you take the second ability, after you produce 1 or more hits during a round of combat, you may spend 1 trade good to produce 1 additional hit. Of course, this makes this technology better, but researching 1 extra yellow technology and this one that is easily 8 resources to just get this, and then you can spend even more resources to produce 1 more hit, I would certainly rather produce some more units and try to win the combat in that way instead of researching this. Next we have the other faction ability, the Midas Turbine. After you activate a system, you may exhaust this card and spend any number of trade goods. For each trade good you spend, apply +1 to the move value of 1 non-fighter ship you control. So this is basically gravity drive boosted by trade goods, and I can definitely see its use. Let's say that this public objectives comes out, populate the outer rim, have units in 3 systems on the edge of the game board other than your home system. And there could easily be some system far away from our home system that is really hard for us to reach. And we all know movement and flexibility is key in this game. So could we speed up a cruiser and reach one of those far away systems? Then it could probably help us score, for instance, this public objective or some of the other control objectives. But of course, having lightweight deflectors will help us get to our destination. But another advantage with it is that it is already in the blue tech tree, so it will even become easier to research lightweight deflectors. Lastly, we have the promissory note, the Vaden handshake. After you activate a system, you may place this card face up in your play area to spend any number of trade goods. For each trade good you spend, apply +1 to the move value of 1 non-fighter ship you control. At the start of your turn, return this card to the Vaden player. So that is, of course, the same as the Midas Turbine. You can just sell it to another player, and that is probably possible to do a few times during the game. When it comes to strategy cards, I think trade is an obvious choice, especially if you get those control tokens for replenishing other players, so you can get their control tokens on your sheet and start collecting the debts throughout the game. But of course, you can also take other strategy cards and still get their control tokens whenever they use the secondary ability. And with that said, remember you can support the channel by becoming a Patreon member or a member of the YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.